Alright, what's up? Gonna be talking about common to legendary monsters, some common uses they have. Just to preface this, all of these can be used for Evil Summoner, so I'm not gonna mention that for any of these because it's used for all of these. Alright, starting with Slimy, this guy, of course, first monster you get, so you have to use him to get through tutorial. Apart from that, not too important. I guess evolving him, he can be decent carry if you don't have like a stacky or anything better, but yeah, he's pretty much just your tutorial guy and nothing else. But he can also be like a early. I know I said I wasn't going to talk too much about Evil Summoner, but him along with the other common slimes and some of the earlier rare monsters, if you want to farm Evil Summoner without upgrading all your units and using auto, you can just go with upgrading the first few units, and then you only need to scroll down a little to put them in. Alright, next to, after that we got Clyde. So Clyde and Flamey are both good for efficient classic level farming if you don't have Jiraiya. You know, put like a Clyde Speedy Flamey, Flamey Speedy Clyde, whatever. And they'll let you farm stuff a little bit faster. Apart from that, I guess they can be alright early game. Clyde can be a stun if you don't have any other options, and Flamey doesn't have too many uses. Grimy, yeah, honestly, Grimy, not that great. Wouldn't really put him in unless you just need to put an extra monster, and he's gonna be your 9th monster. Sparky, pretty good stun early on, pretty good in IQT as well if you want to use a more of like a budget setup to farm for the evil gems there. Alright, next on to Stacky. Stacky can be a pretty strong carry in the early game. Put him between Speedy Mighty. He'll help you get through early classic levels. Probably clear up until JR hard. In which case you'll just use Slime King when you get there. Mocha Evolved can help with early clears, I'd say. Probably up to JR normal as well, but I wouldn't really be trying to get Evolved Mocha if you haven't cleared up there yet. Yeah, not that great. Rocky, he can be a decent stun if you don't have other options. Not the best stun, you know, only 2 seconds and not really guaranteed to hit everything around it like Sparky does. Spidey, you want to put him in mid row if you don't have 3 stuns. You just use your 3rd unit in the mid row as a slow. Never really ideal to put him in. Spiky, same sort of situation as Grimy. Armor break is just not that great. You know, it's more valuable to just have another unit that can do damage rather than, you know, barely weaken enemy monster. Cappuccino, could be an alright stun mid. Not too ideal because you're generally looking for group stuns. But again, he's an option, and then evolving him, not too useful, I'd say. By the time you're doing IQT, you're probably far done with early game anyways. Fury, not a bad stun. AoE, 2 seconds. Yeah, pretty decent stun for the early game. Jack, I believe you can carry him. Yeah, you can use him as a carry between Speedy, Mighty. Not the most ideal. Probably better to use Stacky. I guess you can put him in the back row to just finish enemies off. If you don't have access to like global abilities in the back row. Devin, okay, this guy, amazing S tier. Anyways, sorry, on to Teddy. This guy's sort of your baseline stun. 3 seconds AoE. Very solid stun in the early game. Put him mid row. You can't really go wrong with him. Both Speedy and Mighty, insanely good in the early game. And even Speedy, especially in the end game. Yeah, Speedy is going to be very important all throughout the game, whether it's making your early game carry with Mighty stronger, or it's buffing up units when you're doing elemental challenges, or it's helping out units to farm a level more efficiently. Like you see here, I got Speedy, Jiraiya, Amaterasu. You know, a more efficient way to... There's more efficient setups than this, but Speedy will make this farming way faster. He's kind of like Horus in that sense too. A little bit weaker Horus, but he's still really good and you still want to use him even if you have Horus. Alright, Mighty. Mighty's still very strong. Doesn't get as much praise as Speedy though, because he's outclassed by Hellhound or a 3 gold Greek God, depending on your setup. But he's still really strong early game. You can still use him in the end game. In a lot of different farming setups. So yeah, pretty good unit. After that, you got Yeti. He freezes enemies in front of himself for 2 seconds. Again, decent stun, not the best, not the worst. There is better stuns out there, I'd say, but yeah, pretty solid stun overall. All right, after that, you got Pyro. Not sure how good his evolved form is, but he can be in the back row early game, finish enemies off. You know, you just don't need to put too many upgrades into him for him to, you know, maybe with 2 other units just kill off one small minion. Got Chili. This guy is a pretty strong stun, 3 seconds AOE. Again, solid stun for the mid row. Not sure how good his evolution is. Sluggy is like Spidey in the sense that if you do have if you do lack a 3rd stun in your mid row, you just use Sluggy as sort of a temporary replacement. But again, not that ideal to use him. Apart from that, you got Infernus. Pretty good carry between Speedy and Mighty. I think he's a little bit better than Stacky, and can definitely help you clear up until Gerard. Alright, next up, we got Frostbite. This guy, again, pretty good carry. Pretty good stun as well. Ice Beam, 4 seconds. Very solid stun, actually. Yeah, overall, just great unit early game. And he definitely has value later on as well, because he can be evolved. Just not too much, because again, by the time you're attempting IQT, probably have all the classic levels beaten. But I guess he can, if you do evolve him, you can use him in Volcano Goddess, if you don't have like perfect units for that. Alright, next on to Ash. This guy is a very strong stun. He's like Rocky, but he has double stun duration, right? So he can be really good in that sense. Stun enemies for a while. His evolved form, not sure how good it is, but I'm sure it's pretty strong. Might be able to use it in KPR if you don't have a perfect setup for that. Alright, next we got Puffy. This guy is sort of that next step up from Infernus. You go Stacky, Infernus, and now you got Puffy. Of course, you can also use Frostbite. You can also use Lightning Guy. Yeah, bunch of other great carries, but Puffy, just nice strong carry early game. Next up, you got Lightning Guy. He's a really nice stun. Very fast attack speed. I guess you could carry him, but there are better carries out there. Puffy, you know, Kevin. I'm sure Infernus is maybe around the same in DPS as Lightning. But yeah, overall, again, pretty good. Slime King, very, very good. This is how you're going to be able to clear JR hard. He's also pretty good stun in the end game. You know, 2 seconds, whole map. Can be pretty useful. Again, if you don't have like a perfect setup for elemental challenges. After that, you got Deathbite. Deathbite is very, very good, especially in the late to end game. There's a combo with him and Anubis. Basically, Anubis, I believe, makes enemies take bonus damage from what your units do. And so Deathbite does 50% HP, multiplied by whatever Anubis' damage multiplier is. He can one-shot anything in the game. But even if you don't have Anubis, really good for cutting enemy HP, letting other units finish them off, and yeah, overall just really strong, and you don't really need to level him too much for him to be useful as well. Next up, you got Felina. Used to be the queen of DPS, overshadowed by Amaterasu at this point. I think right now, if you are not too fortunate in that you can't get a lot of mythics for nightmare levels, you level up Felina a little bit. She can help you clear the nightmare levels, help you get red gems for mythics. Also very good in the maximum efficiency classic level farming. Because again, she's global ult, pretty good damage. Guess you could also use her in some elemental challenges. But I think at that point, you know, once you get to level 500, you're that far in the game. You should have like 1 or 2 mythics anyways. Maybe an Amaterasu, maybe Jiraiya. I don't know. Yeah, all around she's decent, but definitely not as good as she used to be. Alright, you got Archangel Castiel now. This guy, really great stun early on, and then later into the game, he's pretty good in Volcano Goddess farming setup. And yeah, just pretty great unit all around. Same sort of situation with Amal, you know, really strong stun early on, and then you can use him in IQT later on, once you have him higher leveled. Unlike the other 2 Archangels, Moloch is absolutely garbage. You can't carry him early on, because he's too expensive to upgrade, But you don't really use him in any of the challenges anyways, because he doesn't have CC. He's not that great. Kevin, you know, rival to Slime King. You can use him to clear up to JR hard. Slime King is definitely a little bit better, but you know, you can always go with Kevin, and I guess you can also use him in budget IQT setup, or like a budget clearing nightmare level setup with a bunch of legendaries. Again, pretty well-rounded unit, and yeah, definitely recommend getting this guy, leveling him a little bit, and he's a great fallback option again for when you don't get mythics. So yeah, that's gonna be some pretty common uses for all the common to legendary units. Again, probably other uses for some guys that I missed. These are just the uses that I'm most familiar with. This is how I use these guys when I've played the game, and when I've played on alt accounts as well. That's gonna be it for this video. Like, sub, and see ya.